The Billionaire's twins were screaming so loud the walls shook. 3 nannies stood at the front door with their bags already packed. The 4th one was crying in the hallway. The 5th had quit over the phone without even showing up that morning. Every single woman who entered that house left broken. Some in days, some in hours. But then a maid arrived with her 7-year-old daughter. And when those twins started screaming at them, the little girl looked at both boys, said one quiet sentence, and the entire house went dead silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Even their billionaire father stood frozen on the staircase, because no adult in 2 years had been able to do what a child just did in 5 seconds. Before we go further, tell me something. Where are you watching this video from right now? And what time is it in your city? Drop it in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you feel something in this one, hit like and subscribe so you never miss a story like this. Jonathan Drake was 46 years old and controlled everything in his life with precision. A 5-story estate in the most exclusive gated community in Scottsdale, Arizona. A pharmaceutical empire that generated more revenue in 1 quarter than most companies see in a decade. A reputation built on cold logic, sharp decisions, and zero tolerance for failure. But his twin sons, Lucas and Mason, were the one thing he could not control. They were 7 years old. Blonde hair, bright blue eyes, faces that looked angelic in photographs and demonic in real life. Their mother, Stephanie, had left 2 years ago. Not for another man, not for a career, not for freedom. She left because she said the house made her feel invisible. She said Jonathan loved his company more than his family. She said the boys deserved a father who was present, not a signature on a check. Jonathan fought for full custody and won, because money wins courtrooms. But money doesn't win children. After Stephanie left, the boys changed. They stopped listening. They stopped following rules. They started treating every adult who entered that house as an enemy to be destroyed. They screamed. They threw things. They hid belongings. They locked nannies out of rooms. They poured juice on freshly cleaned floors and watched the reaction like scientists studying an experiment. 11 nannies in 2 years. 11 women who arrived with hope and left with resignation letters. The last one, a veteran childcare professional with 20 years of experience, lasted exactly 9 days before telling Jonathan's assistant, "Those children don't need a nanny. They need their mother." Jonathan fired her before she finished the sentence. That was the house Rosa Gutierrez walked into on a Thursday morning, with her 7-year-old daughter Lily holding her hand, a small suitcase between them, and absolutely no idea what was waiting behind that door. Rosa was 31 years old. She had worked as a housekeeper for 3 different families in the last 6 years. Clean record, strong references, quiet personality. She wasn't flashy. She wasn't loud. She showed up on time, did her work thoroughly, and never brought personal problems through the front door. But this job was different. The agency had warned her. The Drake twins are difficult. Every placement has failed. We're running out of candidates. Rosa needed the job. The pay was 3 times her last position. She was raising Lily alone after her husband passed from a heart condition 4 years ago. She had no savings, no family support, and a daughter who needed stability more than anything. So she accepted on one condition. "My daughter comes with me. She's quiet. She won't be any trouble. But I don't leave her alone." Jonathan's assistant approved it without asking Jonathan, because at that point, anyone willing to walk through that door was welcome. Rosa and Lily arrived at 8 in the morning. Jonathan met them in the foyer. Tall, sharp suit, phone in hand, already distracted. He looked at Rosa, then down at Lily, then back at Rosa. "The agency didn't mention a child. She's my daughter. She stays with me. She won't interfere with my work." Jonathan studied her for a moment, then waved his hand. "Fine. The boys are upstairs. Good luck." He said it the way someone says good luck to a person walking into a storm, not with encouragement but with certainty that they would fail. Rosa climbed the stairs. Lily held her hand tightly. They reached the playroom door and heard the chaos before they saw it. Toys scattered everywhere. A chair flipped upside down. Marker drawings all over the wall. Lucas was standing on the couch yelling nonsense words at the top of his lungs. Mason was throwing soft blocks at the window. Rosa opened the door. Both boys turned and looked at her with the exact same expression. Calculating, hostile, ready. Lucas screamed, "Go away! We don't want you here." Mason followed immediately. "You're going to leave anyway. Everyone leaves." Rosa stayed calm. She had expected this. She opened her mouth to respond, but Lily stepped forward first. She let go of her mother's hand, walked 3 steps into the room, looked at both boys with her wide brown eyes, and said in a small, clear voice, "My daddy left too, but he didn't choose to." The screaming stopped. The room went completely silent. Lucas lowered his arms. Mason stopped mid-throw. Both boys stared at this girl who had just said the one thing no adult had ever thought to say. Not a command, not a lecture, not a threat. Just the truth. Nobody moved for 10 full seconds. Then Lucas, still standing on the couch, said in a quieter voice, "What do you mean he didn't choose to?" Lily looked at him without any fear. "He got sick, and then he died. He didn't want to leave me." Mason put the block down slowly. "Our mom chose to leave." Lily tilted her head slightly. "That must feel worse." It was such a simple sentence. No therapy language. No careful adult phrasing. Just one child seeing another child's pain with perfect clarity. And in that moment, something shifted in that playroom that no professional had been able to shift in 2 years. Rosa watched from the doorway, heart pounding, not daring to move. She knew her daughter. She knew Lily carried a quiet wisdom that didn't belong to a 7-year-old. The kind of understanding that only comes from losing something too early. Lucas stepped down from the couch. He didn't say anything else. But he stopped screaming. Mason sat on the floor where he was standing and started picking up the blocks he had thrown. Not because someone told him to, but because the energy in the room had changed and his body responded before his mind caught up. Lily looked back at her mother. Rosa nodded gently. Lily sat down on the floor near Mason and started helping him stack the blocks. No conversation. No negotiation. Just 2 kids cleaning up together in silence. Rosa took a breath and began tidying the room. She picked up toys, straightened the chair, wiped the marker from the wall. All without a single word of complaint. The boys glanced at her occasionally, waiting for the lecture. It never came. By lunchtime, something remarkable had happened. All 3 children were sitting on the playroom floor. Lily was drawing. Mason was watching her draw. Lucas was sitting 3 feet away pretending not to watch, but completely watching. Rosa made lunch downstairs. Sandwiches, fruit, juice. She brought it up on a tray and set it in the middle of the floor without ceremony. "Lunch," she said simply. Then she left the room. 5 minutes later, she heard something she didn't expect. 3 sets of small voices talking. Not screaming. Not fighting. Talking. Quietly. About the drawing Lily was making. She stood in the hallway and pressed her hand against her chest. Because she knew, in that moment, that her daughter had just done something extraordinary. Not by trying to fix those boys, but by simply being honest about her own broken piece. Jonathan came home at 9 that night expecting the usual report. Damage done. Rules broken. Another nanny on the edge of quitting. Instead, the house was quiet. Clean. The kitchen had been scrubbed. The playroom, when he checked it, was organized. Every toy in its place. Every marker capped. The chair upright. He found Rosa in the kitchen wiping down counters. "Where are the boys?" "Sleeping. They ate dinner at 6:30. Bathed by 7. In bed by 8. Jonathan stared at her. "They went to bed at 8? "Yes." "Without a fight?" "Without a fight." He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her like a balance sheet that didn't add up. "What did you do?" Rosa hung the towel over the oven handle. "I didn't do anything, Mr. Drake. My daughter did." She told him what happened. Lily's words. The silence that followed. The shift. Jonathan listened without interrupting, which was unusual for a man who interrupted everyone. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then, "Your daughter said that? About her father. She tells the truth." It's all she knows how to do. He looked toward the staircase. They haven't gone to bed before midnight in months. My last nanny used to call me at 11 begging for help. Rosa said nothing. She didn't need to prove anything beyond what the quiet house already proved. The next morning, Jonathan left for work early. Rosa started her routine: kitchen, laundry, floors, meals. Lily sat at the kitchen table with her coloring book, quiet and content. When the boys came downstairs, Rosa expected the defiance to return. Morning light has a way of erasing whatever softness the night allowed. But Lucas walked in and looked at Lily. "What are you drawing?" "A garden," Lily said. "My dad used to have one." Lucas sat down across from her, watched her color for a moment, then said, "We have a garden outside. It's dead though. Nobody takes care of it." Lily looked up. "We could fix it." Mason appeared at the doorway. "Fix what?" "The garden," Lucas said, then added, with something that almost sounded like interest, "Lily says we can." Rosa brought breakfast to the table. 3 plates, 3 glasses of juice. She sat Lily's vitamins beside her glass and said nothing about the conversation. She just let it exist. After breakfast, all 3 children went to the backyard. Rosa watched from the kitchen window. Lily was kneeling in the dirt, showing the boys where to pull weeds. Lucas was pulling them with more force than necessary, but he was doing it. Mason was carrying a small watering can like it was the most important task in the world. For the first time in 2 years, those boys were building something instead of destroying it. By the second week, the house had a rhythm Jonathan didn't recognize. The boys woke up without tantrums. They ate meals at the table, actual seated meals with actual conversation. Lucas had started talking to Rosa directly, short sentences, guarded, but real. Mason followed Lily everywhere like a shadow. Not out of dependence, but out of genuine fascination with this girl who carried sadness the same way he did, but somehow still smiled. Rosa ran the house with invisible precision. Meals appeared on time. Laundry was folded and placed outside bedroom doors. Floors were spotless. The kitchen smelled like something homemade every evening. She never asked for praise, never reported to Jonathan with complaints or updates. She just worked, and the house responded. Jonathan started noticing things he had never noticed before. On Tuesday he came home and the dining table was set for 4, not 5. Rosa and Lily ate in the kitchen separately. He looked at the table and felt something tighten in his stomach without understanding why. On Wednesday he came home early and heard music from the living room. Rosa had put on a soft playlist while the children drew on the living room floor. Lily was teaching Mason how to draw a sunflower. Lucas was attempting to draw a car and getting frustrated. Lily leaned over and helped him fix the wheels without being asked. Lucas looked at her drawing, then at his and said, "You're better than me." Lily shrugged. "My dad taught me. He was really good." Lucas paused. "Do you still miss him?" "Every day." "Does it get smaller?" Lily thought for a moment. "No, but you get bigger, so it fits better." Jonathan was standing in the hallway listening. That sentence from a 7-year-old hit him harder than any board meeting, any contract negotiation, any financial loss he had ever absorbed. He went to his office and sat there in the dark. Because his sons had been asking adults for help for 2 years, through screaming, through destruction, through silence after the screaming, and not one adult had answered them the way one child just did. Not with authority, not with rules, with honesty. On Friday, Jonathan did something he hadn't done in over a year. He came home at 5, walked into the living room and sat on the floor next to his sons. Lucas looked at him like he had lost his mind. "What are you doing?" "Sitting. On the floor. Is that a problem?" Mason almost smiled. Lily handed Jonathan a colored pencil without looking up. "You can help with the sky." He took the pencil. And for 30 minutes, the billionaire CEO of a pharmaceutical empire sat on his living room floor coloring a paper sky with 3 children, and it was the most productive thing he had done in 2 years. On Saturday morning, Jonathan's phone rang while the kids were in the backyard working on the garden. He answered without checking the number. "Jonathan." The voice was sharp, familiar, cold. "Stephanie." He hadn't heard from her in 19 months. No calls. No letters. No birthday cards for the boys. Complete silence until now. I want to see the boys. Jonathan gripped the phone. You lost that right when you walked out. I'm their mother. You were their mother. Then you chose not to be. Stephanie's voice tightened. I've changed. I've been in therapy. I filed paperwork. I want shared custody, Jonathan. My lawyer will be in touch. He hung up without responding. Stood at the window watching his sons dig in dirt alongside a 7-year-old girl in a yellow sundress, and felt the ground shift beneath everything he had just started to build. He didn't tell anyone that day. He carried the weight of it through dinner, through bedtime, through the quiet hours after the children slept. Rosa noticed the change immediately. She always did. After the boys were asleep, she found him standing in the kitchen staring at a cold cup of coffee. Mr. Drake. Something's wrong. He didn't look up. The boy's mother called today. She wants custody. Rosa was quiet for a moment. Then, what do you want? I want them here, where they're safe, where they're finally okay. Then fight for that. He looked at her. She's going to use everything against me. The nannies, the chaos, the fact that my sons didn't speak to me for months. Rosa set down the towel she was holding. Your sons are speaking now. They're eating. They're laughing. They're planting a garden. That's not a broken home, Mr. Drake. That's a home that healed. He held her gaze. Because of your daughter. Because of everyone in this house who finally decided to stay. That sentence landed somewhere deep. He looked away first, said goodnight, went upstairs, and lay in bed knowing that what he felt for this woman was no longer professional distance. It was something dangerously close to trust, and trust was the most expensive thing Jonathan Drake had ever been afraid to invest in. Monday morning, Jonathan's lawyer Daniel confirmed the petition. Stephanie had filed for shared custody citing emotional rehabilitation and therapeutic progress. Her legal team was painting a narrative. Loving mother forced out by a controlling husband, now ready to rebuild the bond with her children. Daniel was direct. She has a case, not a strong one, but family courts favor mothers, Jonathan, especially ones with therapy records and a remorse narrative. We need to show stability, consistency, a home environment that's working. Jonathan looked at his desk. It is working. Then prove it. Documentation, school records, behavioral reports, character witnesses, everything. That week, Jonathan went into overdrive, but not in the way he usually did. Instead of pouring himself into work, he poured himself into his sons. He drove them to school every morning. Packed lunches badly, but he packed them. Sat through a parent-teacher meeting for the first time in 2 years. Lucas's teacher said the improvement was remarkable. Mason's teacher said he had started participating in class again. On Wednesday evening, Lily and the twins were in the living room building a blanket fort. Rosa was folding laundry nearby. Jonathan came home, saw the fort, and stopped. Lucas poked his head out. You can't come in. Password only. What's the password? Mason whispered loudly to Lily. Should we tell him? Lily whispered back. Make him guess. Jonathan guessed wrong 4 times on purpose. Each wrong answer got a louder laugh from inside the fort. On the 5th try, Mason shouted, It's sunflower. Lily picked it. Jonathan crawled inside the blanket fort, suit and all, and sat cross-legged between his sons. Lily showed him the drawing they had taped to the inside wall. For people standing in a garden. 2 boys. 1 girl. 1 tall man. That's you. Lily pointed at the tall figure. Why am I so big? Because you're the dad. Dads are supposed to be big so kids feel safe. Jonathan looked at that drawing for a long time. Then he looked at his sons, really looked at them, and saw 2 boys who were finally starting to believe they could trust someone again. He made a decision that night. Whatever it took, whatever he had to sacrifice, cancel, rearrange, he was not going to lose this. The week before the hearing, Stephanie came to the house without warning. A white Range Rover pulled into the driveway. Jonathan saw it from his office window and was at the front door in seconds. Stephanie stepped out looking like she had prepared for a photo shoot. Perfect hair, designer outfit, rehearsed expression of maternal warmth. I want to see my sons. You don't show up unannounced at my house. It's their house too. She walked past him before he could stop her, heels clicking on marble. She entered the living room where the boys were sitting on the floor with Lily, working on a puzzle Rosa had bought them. All three children looked up. Lucas and Mason recognized their mother instantly. Lucas's face went rigid. Mason moved closer to Lily without thinking. An instinct that said everything words couldn't. Stephanie crouched down with her practiced smile. Hi, babies. Mommy's here. Lucas stood up slowly. Don't call us that. Stephanie blinked. Lucas, sweetheart. You left. You packed a bag and left while we were sleeping. We woke up and you were gone. His voice shook but didn't break. You didn't even say goodbye. Mason's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. He stayed next to Lily, who quietly placed her hand on his arm. A small gesture that held more weight than anything in the room. Stephanie looked at Lily, then at Rosa, who had appeared in the doorway. Her expression shifted, warmth replaced by something sharper. Who is this child? And why is she touching my son? Rosa answered from the doorway, calm and level. She's my daughter. The boys are comfortable with her. Comfortable? Stephanie stood up. I'm their mother. I don't need a maid's daughter to comfort my children. Lily looked up at Stephanie with clear, unafraid eyes and said, They're my friends. You don't have to be mad about that. The room went still. Stephanie stared at the small girl who had just spoken to her with more honesty than any adult in her life had offered in years. Jonathan stepped in. You need to leave. Now, whatever you want, you do it through the court. Stephanie straightened herself, looked at Lucas, at Mason, at the puzzle, at Lily, at Rosa. She saw a home she no longer belonged to, and it wasn't because of the furniture or the money. It was because every person in that room had chosen each other, and she was the one who had walked away from that choice. This isn't over, she said. Lucas replied quietly, It was over the night you left. Stephanie walked out. The door closed. Mason finally let the tears fall. Lily held his hand. Lucas sat back down and picked up a puzzle piece with shaking fingers. Rosa brought water. Jonathan sat on the floor beside his sons. Nobody spoke for a long time, and the silence was enough. The night before the hearing, Jonathan found Rosa sitting at the kitchen table with a folder. What's that? She opened it. Inside, organized by date, were notes from every single day since she had arrived. Behavioral changes. Meals the boys ate. Words they said. Milestones. Lucas's first calm morning, dated. Mason's first unprompted laugh, dated. The day the boys asked Lily to play instead of her asking them. The day Lucas called Rosa by her name instead of ignoring her. Jonathan sat down and looked through page after page. You kept all this? Every day. Why? Rosa closed the folder. Because I've been a maid in enough houses to know that when things go well, people forget. And when courts get involved, only paper matters. He looked at her. You knew this might happen. I knew those boys deserved someone keeping track of how hard they fought to come back. He sat in silence for a long time. Then, without planning it, without rehearsing, he said, I don't know what I'd do without you in this house. She met his eyes. You would have figured it out eventually. You just needed someone to stay long enough for you to catch up. It's more than that, Rosa. She was quiet. Then, I know. But right now, tomorrow matters. The boys matter. We handle that first. And after, she didn't look away. After, we talk. The hearing was at 9 the next morning. Jonathan and Daniel arrived early. The boys were brought with a child advocate. Rosa was called as a witness. Lily waited with a court-appointed guardian. Jonathan testified calmly. He didn't hide the early chaos. He owned the nannies, the absence, the years of throwing money at a problem he should have faced himself. But he showed what the house looked like now. School records, teacher statements, behavioral assessments, the garden photos, the drawings, everything. Stephanie's lawyer built a case on transformation. A mother who had healed and wanted to reconnect. But when Stephanie was questioned on details, the cracks appeared fast. She didn't know the boy's current school. Didn't know Lucas had stopped having nightmares. Didn't know Mason had started reading on his own. Didn't know about the garden. Didn't know about Lily. Lucas spoke to the judge. I don't hate my mom, but I don't trust her. I trust the people who stayed. Mason, nervous but steady. I don't want to go somewhere new. I just stopped being scared. When Rosa took the stand, she spoke about the silence she walked into. The screaming. The 11 nannies before her. And then, the moment her daughter said one sentence that changed everything. When asked what made the difference, Rosa said, adults tried to manage those boys. My daughter just told them the truth. Children don't need management. They need honesty. The courtroom was quiet after she spoke. 3 days later, Daniel called. Full custody confirmed. Stephanie gets supervised visitation only. Jonathan hung up, closed his eyes, let the weight lift. He walked downstairs to the backyard where all 3 children were watering the garden. The sunflowers Lily had planted were finally tall enough to lean toward the light. Lucas was measuring them with a ruler. Mason was naming each one. You're staying, Jonathan said. This is home. For good. Lucas looked up. The court said. The court said. Mason dropped the watering can and ran. He hit Jonathan at full speed, arms wrapped tight. Lucas followed a second later. Jonathan held both of them and let them hold him. Lily stood by the sunflowers, watching. Rosa appeared at the back door. The boys pulled apart and looked at Lily, then looked at their father. Mason said, She stays too, right? Jonathan looked at Rosa. They stay. That evening, nobody wanted to leave the house. Lucas asked for grilled cheese. Mason asked for chocolate milk. Lily asked for strawberries. They set the table together the way they had learned to naturally without being told. Lily placed the napkins. Lucas carried the plates. Mason arranged the glasses with careful precision. Rosa served the food. Lily looked at the table and said, Someone should say thank you before we eat. Lucas nodded. You do it, Lily. Lily folded her small hands. The boys followed. Rosa bowed her head. Jonathan closed his eyes. Lily said softly, Thank you for the food. Thank you for this house. Thank you that we don't have to be scared anymore. And thank you for my friends. Simple, honest, complete. Later that night, after the children were asleep, all 3 of them in the blanket fort they refused to take down. Jonathan found Rosa on the back porch looking at the garden under the moonlight. The sunflowers grew fast, he said. They had good soil, she said. He stood beside her, quiet. Then, without rehearsal, everything I said before, it's still here. She turned to face him. I told myself every day that this was a job. Every day. But watching you become the father those boys needed. Watching Lily find brothers she never had. I stopped being able to pretend. Then stop pretending. She looked at him. If we do this, it's real. It's honest. The kids come first. Always. Always. The kiss was quiet and unhurried. The kind that happens when 2 people have waited long enough to know it's not loneliness talking. The certainty. From inside the blanket fort, a rustling. Then Lucas's voice, flat and dry. We can see you through the window. Mason's voice immediately after. Lily said this would happen last week. Lily's voice, matter of fact. I did say that. Rosa laughed. Jonathan shook his head. And in that moment, without paperwork, without announcements, without ceremony, 5 people became a family. In the months that followed, Stephanie began supervised visits. Slowly, awkwardly, she started learning that motherhood isn't a title you keep. It's a choice you make every single day. Jonathan restructured his company to work fewer hours. He chose presence. He chose the floor over the office. He chose bedtime stories over board meetings. Lucas started writing short stories at school. His teacher called them remarkable. Mason became the class artist. Sunflowers appeared in every drawing. And Lily, surrounded by 2 brothers who chose her the same way she chose them, finally stopped carrying her grief alone. Rosa, with Jonathan's full encouragement, enrolled in the early childhood education program she had always dreamed about. She built her own career, her own identity. Her own name, not as someone who lived in his world, but as someone who had always known her worth and finally had the space to let it bloom. A year later, the table was bigger. The kids were louder. The garden was overflowing. Rosa at the center. Jonathan beside her. 3 children between them. Fighting over the last strawberry, arguing about whose sunflower was tallest, making plans for a treehouse that would never get finished. The biggest thing in that mansion was never the square footage or the company value or the cars in the garage. It was the family that grew from one honest sentence, spoken by a 7-year-old girl who understood that the only thing broken people really need is someone brave enough to tell them the truth. If the story touched your heart, hit that like button right now. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? What time is it in your city? I want to know how far this story reached. I read every single comment.